Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today at the Tech Week and to join this panel. I was thinking about it, and I feel as if we're all living right now, we're balancing on marbles, because there's the health crisis, the economic crisis, and also, the human equality crisis. And it can be very disconcerting. One of the reasons is that we're virtual is because of the health crisis. But what's amazing to me is that during all of these things is people emerge and they become innovative, they become leaders and new entrepreneurs, they become new businesses. And all of these things are created sometimes during these types of crises. And one of the things and one of the blocking factors for new business and for technology innovation is often around funding. And so the relevance of this panel is to look at the changes that are happening in how companies are funded, both startups and technology companies that we're looking at. So it's my pleasure to host this panel. I've learned a tremendous amount from my panelists already in just getting ready for this. And I'd like to do a short introduction, just name everybody, and then I'll let them introduce themselves. So we have on the panel, and it's differentiated insights. Not everyone has the same background, which makes it really exciting for me, and I'm going to learn a lot. So first of all, we have Brian Sewell, who is with Rockwell Capital. He's the founder of Rockwell Capital, and he can tell you what that does. In addition to that, we have Tom Lee, who founded and is the head researcher for Fundstrat. And Fundstrat is a global advisor around investing, and he can share a bit more about that. And last but certainly not least is Massimo from the UK, and he is partner in Calyx. Sorry, it's Calyx Partner Office. And so between the three of them, I think we're going to get very different views and a great deal of insight into what is happening in high net worth and wealth management, and how high net worth individuals are investing directly in technology and moving more into technology. So to start this off, because we're all virtual, I'd like you to introduce yourselves. And in addition to that, I'd like to make it a bit more fun. And I'm sure your backgrounds are so impressive, but I'm sure when you were a child, you didn't necessarily think, I want to grow up and be in wealth management. So I'd like you to share what you're doing, and also in addition to that, what was your childhood dream job? So let's start, Brian, with you.
Sure, Brian Sewell, founder of Rockwell Capital. So Rockwell Capital is a single family office that is focused in both technology, artificial intelligence, cryptocurrency, and manages a portfolio for our office. I grew up professionally in banking, and then as an entrepreneur, I've had a few successful exits, and then was an early investor in Bitcoin back in 2012, and that turned out to work out pretty well. So I've been active. We're invested in companies, but we're primarily invested in early stage companies, and then we have some digital asset businesses, exchanges that we do as well. So when I was about 16 years old, I was a concert pianist, and I started writing music, and I wanted to be a professional singer-songwriter. And so during college, I should say, I wrote some music for film. I wrote some music for a few film projects, and really enjoyed that, and then completely made a major career shift when I got recruited by Jim Judd, who was the president and CEO of World Savings at the time. And then and now I'm here. So
Thank you so much. A concert pianist. Wow, that's interesting. So Tom, let's jump to you.
Yes, well, I'm the co-founder of Fundstrat, and it's a independent research firm, and I've been running that business for 6 years. And prior to that, I was the chief equity strategist for JP Morgan. And I'd been at JP Morgan since '99, but my sort of background in terms of investment and advisory has really been in technology, because I was a wireless analyst in the early '90s following the cellular industry in its earliest days. Back then, there were only 34 million cell phone users. Today there's 5 billion. But I grew up in Michigan. My parents are immigrants. They came to the US in 1960. 62, my dad is one of the doctors, so he came in under the, when Ted Kennedy wanted to bring more doctors into the US. So, growing up, my dad came to the US with, $50 in his pocket, didn't speak a lot of English, but he ended up becoming a psychiatrist and did really well. And so I think as a child, I thought it would be great to be a doctor. So I used to hang out at his offices. And, but the problem I had was in high school, I took biology and we started to dissect animals, and it was gross. So I realized I didn't really want to see the inside of people's bodies. So, so I was planning to be an Asian studies major, and I was going to go to Dartmouth, but my older sister's boyfriend at the time told me I should, that I wouldn't make any money if I did Asian studies, so I should try to study business. And he was in college at the time, so I also applied to Wharton undergrad in Michigan while I was living in Michigan, and then went there, fell in love with research, stock research, which in the 90s was kind of a boring backroom job, but it was really interesting to me. And so that's how I fell into my business.
Wow, a doctor. I was asking you these questions so that I wouldn't be so intimidated. But even as children, you had big ambitions. So Massimo, let's hear from you.
Oh, thank you, Kim. So I'm the founding partner of Calix Private Office, who is a multifamily office based in London, as you indicated before. I started my career in Switzerland. My cultural background is Italian and Swiss. So that's where I started my career in the early 80s for one of the biggest banks there, UBS. And since 1998, I've been running a multifamily office in the UK. This is my third company. We look after, private individual and obviously technology, feels very highly in investment decision, which I'm sure we are going to elaborate after we've all introduced ourselves. My childhood dream job, I don't know if I would call it a dream job, but quite early on in my childhood, I always wanted to be a barrister. Maybe because I like the idea of putting my point across in front of an audience and of course helping justice, or maybe because I could wear a wig to work. So I'm not sure which one but maybe both. So yeah, I think barrister is where I had my dream set on. But being from Switzerland, you either do watches, chocolate, or banking, and I think banking was the easy one. Kim, you are on mute.
That's amazing. I actually didn't know the answers to any of these questions, and I really thought I would be less intimidated. So now let me start. Let's jump into the meat of this. there's a lot of analysis and statistics that show that high net worth individuals have moved their investing. In fact, I read something the other day that said they've actually doubled their wealth in the last 10 years, but they've also really transitioned to where they're investing. And a lot of it is into technology. And I think it would be very interesting for people to understand, is it all over technology? Is it in specific verticals of technology? And so maybe from a research point of view, Tom, you can give us some insights into what you've seen.
Well, the evolution of raising capital and how companies are funded, has evolved in the last 20 years. At the same time, you've described this big change, and part of it is that traditional ways of sort of allocating capital, if you were giving it to an investment bank, it's information is so much more widely available, and it's been very expensive. So I think that's been a natural reason why capital has, family offices have really taken a lot more active control of how they invest. And technology makes a lot of sense because, I think there's really two areas in the world where capital can be allocated and there's real opportunities to create value. And, one is healthcare and the other is technology. And, both areas really do, really have a lot of innovation, but that innovation has a lot more risk. So, these are not always going to be companies that should be publicly funded. And within technology, as the last few years, a lot of that innovation in technology has been really digitizing a lot of existing businesses. I think that this pandemic is going to create a new wave of opportunities. So I think that what has created a lot of value and a lot of money from social media to e-commerce, that's less exciting today, and it's going to be a lot more interesting to see how people really use technology to try to bring people together in a time when it's going to be quite difficult for people to meet and get together.
You remember to.
I'm sorry. I was on mute. So Massimo, would you, thank you, Tom. And it's really interesting because I do think there's been a lot of systemic change in everything we're seeing. And also what was common before is really changing dramatically. So Massimo, what are you seeing around areas and verticals, etc.? Are you seeing anything different or similar?
Yeah, I would certainly, agree with what Thomas was saying. I mean, I would add another dimension, though. I mean, you can, the investment world is a bit like Mohammed and the mountain. Technology has come to us. Technology is now such an important part of the investable world, which is, inevitably, if you look at, I shared with you some information about just the S&P 500, which is obviously one of the most owned asset, across the investment community. 10 years ago, the market cap of the 10 biggest stock were about 2.2 trillion. I mean, fast forward 10 years, the biggest stock in the S&P is 2.1 trillion, which is obviously Apple. Technology has just, in the last 10 years, penetrated every sector. The digitalization phenomenon we are seeing. You cannot live without technology. In the old days, you just needed capital and resources, to be able to operate. Now technology is just everywhere. So, you cannot but invest in technology. So that's certainly what I see when clients come to us and wants to build an investment portfolio. Technology is just, the primary sector where they want their risk capital to be allocated. Certainly, the verticalization of technology. There are certainly sectors that have come to the fore, like the software as a service, the SaaS sector, and that's where I think the investment world within the high net worth individual becoming more interesting, because more and more clients want to access that segment directly, pre-IPO, the venture capital stage, private equity, and obviously you need expertise to access that segment, which is is more risky, by definition, is less liquid, but the high net worth certainly are looking for a lot of or expanding their exposure in that direction.
Yes, I think they are. And so do you think that there's also a move, because with technology investments, if it's in the equity market, then you're actually investing in public companies. But do you think there's a bigger move as well to invest pre-IPO and, get closer and closer to the start of these companies?
For sure, yeah. Look, we are now on the 11 years of the bull market. We got a hiccup in March. So clients are wary about valuation, and they think they can get better return, going down the chain and accessing investment, at the early stage of their of their journey. Obviously there is more risk involved, and I guess that's why clients come to organization like ours and the other panelists to seek for advice.
Thank you. And Brian, one of the other things which we didn't talk about when you and I connected, but I've heard over the past 3 days actually of 3 different companies that were going to raise funds, and now what they're doing, instead of having a VC funders, they're directing the high net worth individuals directly to the companies. Do you know why that's happening, or are there specific reasons for that?
No, I think the answer is not really simple, cut and dry, and one answer that covers everything. I think I love the information that I've heard so far, and certainly democratization of information has opened things up so that high net worth individuals, family offices can make those direct investments. But investing in venture capital, I mean, is sometimes a much bigger bite than what a typical family office it wants to bite off on, right? And I think I can only speak for myself, and maybe some of the trends that I see. I do see other family offices, friends of mine that are investing in technology companies. I do see that happening, right? I do see some from a management standpoint trying to get some alpha in their investments and do that. They're all looking for unicorns. But for myself personally, I think I'm involved in projects that I just love, right? And it's not necessarily about the money and the return for me, right? And as of about 3 years ago, I started divesting, right? I started getting out of things that because I wasn't searching for return. So I'm doing some impact investing, launching a bank in Bermuda that's going to have some humanitarian impact. I'm involved in projects that drive money into some charities that I'm passionate about. And like I said before, I did a stint years ago at Johns Hopkins and at Stanford in data science, and I really enjoy playing with a bunch of nerds and artificial intelligence. And so I have a few developers on the payroll, and we play around with projects to see if we can create something really cool. And so and then cryptocurrency. I have a background in finance, and so the light bulbs went off for me in 2012 about what Satoshi Nakamoto created in that space. I think I identified that it was revolutionary at the time, and have been focused on that area. So, but my focus is to accelerate the adoption of this technology for the humanitarian impact that it's going to have throughout the world, right? As we democratize finance, as we make resources available in regions of the world that haven't been more available. So for me personally, it's really a matter of personal preference. It's not about the returns. And I think for a lot of family offices, if you spoke to them, they would probably say the same, right? Most of them have made their wealth in some kind of successful business exit or some venture, and are wanting to either turn their money over to somebody else to manage while they do what they want to do, and also leverage their money that they have. And maybe like for ourselves, we manage it all internally, right? We're a staff of 3 and we manage it internally, and our focus is really about focusing on the things that we really want to. And if I could reduce that staff down to, don't tell my staff, but if I could reduce that down to 1,
we won't tell anybody.
no, I would, and to simplify things. And so anyway, I think that each institution or each family office is going to have a little bit different take on that. And if there's other family offices that are watching this, I would, I think many of them realize, if they don't already, that, investing in startup companies is not for the faint of heart, right? You don't want to focus on that because you think you're going to make a great return. You should focus on that if you're having a lot of fun and you're really enjoying what you're invested in and you're participating in it, actively involved in it. If it's not, because every time you invest in something, it takes a piece of your brain and puts it in that direction, right? And how many different directions do you want your brain going, right, as an investor? So anyway, those are my thoughts.
That's an interesting way to think about it. Do you think, either Tom or Massimo, are you seeing where people are not just investing for the overall return, but are doing much more impact investing?
Sorry,
go ahead, Massimo.
Okay, so I would say return always, is a good guiding light in, when you're talking to committing capital. But certainly, there has to be more than just return. ESG, all this movement is obviously, is a force to be reckoned with, and particularly because of the type of environment we live in, people will care more and more about the environment and other impact investing. But to tell you the truth, everybody wants to deploy capital with the expectation of making a return at the end of the day. But they are much more aware of there are other priority that particularly with younger generation coming to the fore and helping maybe their parents to make decision. We are seeing that for sure. Sorry, Thomas.
Right. Sorry, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say we have clients in over 20 countries, and I think now well over 1,000, including many family offices. I think return is still the primary focus. And it makes sense, because otherwise we would be funding education and teachers or improving the lives of people. But as you know, unfortunately, most of technology investment is not designed to make people's lives better at the core. I mean, they're trying to improve people's lives, but at a way to generate money. I'm not trying to be too negative, but at the end of the day, I don't see those sort of positive mandates being driven by anything other than return on capital.
Right. Yeah, and I don't think it's an issue of being negative. I think it is much more what's reality and how do you deal with reality. And I think for a very long time, high net worth individuals have invested for a return, but they then, as some do, they then let someone else invest for them, and then they move to what they have a passion about to make an impact in. So sometimes it's together, sometimes it's not. So one of the other things from a technology investment point of view, Is everybody seeing a big move now? We've got two of the panelists that have already talked about digital assets and cryptocurrency, but do you think that is going mainstream? That there's a lot more people investing? Tom, would you like to?
Oh, yeah. Yes, it's definitely been happening that cryptocurrencies and digital assets are becoming more acceptable, and therefore over time will be mainstream. I think in 2020, a lot of things have happened that have made digital assets a lot more appealing. You know, foremost, there have been actions like Paul Tudor Jones, who's an extremely well-known commodity investor, announced he was investing in Bitcoin. And we've seen the US regulators become a lot more willing to allow US banks to provide banking and reserves for stable coins, digital assets. That's a huge deal. And I think very recently, actually, Jay Clayton, who's the SEC chief in the US, had made a comment that wasn't pro cryptocurrencies, but pro blockchain and digital assets, which, you know, he noted that basically equity trading today and most financial securities transactions aren't settled in the physical realm. You know, they're settled in the digital world. And, you know, that means that level of security is only maintained by databases of various banks. And he just noted that, you know, tokenizing this or putting it onto something equivalent to a blockchain would be a lot more secure. And that is really the core security model of digital assets. So even though the SEC has publicly come out not in favor of, or not necessarily willing to embrace cryptocurrencies yet, it's their acknowledgement that the technology that cryptocurrencies use is superior is essentially a backhanded endorsement.
That's very interesting, because when I've been in technology most of my life, and when new technology comes out, people always, or new currency or a new way to do things happens, people are always very, you know, they identify all the risks, and then you look at what we've been doing. And I remember this with email. Somebody said, "Oh, I think I lost an email." I said, "How much regular mail have you ever lost?" They said, "Well, I don't know." I said, so, you know, there's a balance there. And I think, but I think that's interesting. People are beginning to acknowledge it, but I do think it'll take time. The fact that you've all got Bermuda backgrounds, I do want to bring this conversation locally. I wish we were locally. I wish we were all together, but from a Bermuda point of view. And I think every company and country has what I call a superpower, right? Or a couple of superpowers. And I'd be really interested to understand, what do you think Bermuda's superpowers are? And how that makes it easier for people to do business here, and for investments, both in companies starting and for high net worth individuals to come here and invest. So Brian, would you like to kick us off?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Before I mention that, I think I might share something that Tom might find interesting as well. I know over the last couple of years, we have worked to try and get more institutions involved into the digital asset space. And for the most part, they, you know, continued to push us off. We're a major liquidity provider in the market under the name Rockwell Trades. And we trade with Cumberland and many other digital asset OTC desks in the space. A trend that's very recent and very current that I'm identifying is these people that we've been speaking to in the past are now seem to be coming to us saying, we need to get set up. We need to connect our APIs. We need to, it seems to be there's quite a bit of rumbling among institutions, particularly in this time, when we've had this whole COVID-19 And we've had some fear about our economic environment as a result of that. So we see a lot of institutions now that used to wouldn't give us the time of day are now saying, hey, what do I need to do to get set up? And that's an interesting development in the crypto space. And I know that in Bermuda, speaking about Bermuda, Bermuda is very interested and motivated to create a financial center there in Bermuda. And I personally am invested in Bermuda. And I think that what I noticed about Bermuda is the ability to be able to get things done. So if you're a technology company or a digital asset company, I would say that their superpower is the fact that you can land in Bermuda and you can meet with everyone that you need to meet with and every division in the government within a day or two and have the conversations and communications that you need. And sometimes even influence legislation inside of Bermuda if your idea is significant enough and the need is there, and make things happen and get things done. And in this new innovative technology space of blockchain where the regulatory environment is very ambiguous, that's a really powerful thing. And I think it bodes well for Bermuda.
That's excellent. So Massimo, what do you see as Bermuda's superpower? You're on mute, sorry.
It's my turn to speak on. No, I would say the most obvious one is obviously the beauty of the place. I mean, you know, I come and visit Bermuda, you know, a few times a year, but you know, it's an absolute gem. I mean, you know, he has certainly a lot to offer, you know, for you know, it's pleasing to the eyes, you know, the sea, the beach, you know, this is a fabulous place to spend time on. I mean, and so I guess I'm stating the obvious here. Certainly, you know, there is a very professional community, both in the legal profession and the accountants. You know, all the big names are there. You know, the reinsurance business obviously helps the island to, you know, be, you know, noticed across the financial world. The trust business also, I think, is noteworthy. So I think, you know, there is a lot of things that Bermuda has to offer, and some things that maybe, quite frankly, they could do better.
Okay. Well, what's the thing that they could do better?
Well, I would say, you know, if the government really wants to promote investment inbound, you know, they should relax, you know, certainly some of the ownership rules that are still, you know, very protectionistic, you know, so that you want to come in and set up a business. You know, I think there is a 60-40 rules, and, you know, in today's world, we are all globalized, we all have options. It would be nice to, you know, to be able to come to an island, set up a business without having to worry about these little things. You know, the world is too big. You know, we need to move fast. You know, yeah, that's certainly, I would say, is top of my list. You know, second, maybe the banking. You know, I'm glad. I was pleased to hear that Brian is going to improve that picture. You know, there is very little competition in the banking world. That obviously is not you know. Is not very efficient. So, you know, certainly top one is the one I just mentioned, and banking, I kind of think is maybe also an obvious one.
Right. Okay, and Tom, what do you think our superpower is?
Well, I can share some of my experiences firsthand. I'm not starting a business in Bermuda, but I did some things last year with Brian, and I would say the superpower is, I think anyone who wants to do business in Bermuda can actually have a meeting with the policymakers that will make a decision. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and that's important because, as you can imagine, one of the reasons people don't start businesses in America or they move out of the US is because, you know, one, the US doesn't allow necessarily want to pick winners and losers. So sometimes they'll let dominant industries continue to dominate. But in Bermuda, you know, they're open to hearing new ideas. They were just created a huge market around innovation and insurance because of that. And so I think that ability to access regulators is a huge deal because, and of course, Bermuda has a currency that essentially is linked to US dollar. And so you're not necessarily funding it in some currency that you may be mismatched on asset liability. So I think there's a lot of things that are appealing.
Sorry, thank you so much indeed. I keep putting myself on mute in case there's background noise, so I apologize. So one of the things that I think is kind of interesting from the startup point of view, or the opposite point of view, if high net worth individuals are starting to invest in technology companies or startups of different types of startups, then how do the startups find these people? How does the word get out, or how do if I'm got a startup and I'm looking for a high net worth individual, how do I go about that? Is there any way to do that, or do people come to family offices with new business ideas? Massimo, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't think there is a hard and fast rule in accessing capital. I think the history says you have the friends and family round, and I guess most companies start from there. They start from the people that they know, because obviously there is always an issue of trust. When you deploy capital in a new venture. But more and more, there are angel community. There are a lot of very, very active association of high net worth individual that get together, and they share expertise, and by so doing they can access idea more so, and family offices, of course, organization like us, and I'm sure of the other panelists, their door get knocked and people come to the door and present their idea. So I think it's a multitude of channels, but I would say there is no shortage of idea coming by private clients.
Right. Right. Do any of you actually, Brian, maybe you can answer this. Do you have people knocking at your door all the time?
Sure, of course. We always have people knocking at the door, contacting us on LinkedIn and every other way that they possibly can. So, and it's,
so your contact details are of value.
Contact details are of value. Yes, and I don't think anybody can get a hold of me via email or phone unless they're on my list, because I think I have enough blocks and that's a frustration too, because some people, I would like to be able to get a hold of me, but most people can't. So I would say a couple of things, because I am an entrepreneur. I have started some companies, and I am an investor, and I do invest in startup companies. So a couple of things. One is going after institutional money and family offices is probably not the right angle if you're trying to raise money for a startup technology company. I think you should focus on those organizations that are set up to do that and do that professionally, VC firms and angel money. And if you are going to approach someone like myself or some of the panel members here, put your business idea in about 3 sentences, right? 2 or 3 sentences. Successful entrepreneurs, investors know exactly what they're looking for right out of the gate, and they can tell you yes or no in about 5 seconds, right? And so, and if they say no, it's not because your idea is a bad idea. It's just because it's not where they're focused on, right? So it's not the area that they're focused on, and so they're just not interested and don't want to dive any deeper. I had somebody contact me on LinkedIn recently, and normally I would never do this, but I had someone come to LinkedIn and they said to me, they asked me about using machine learning for credit scoring to provide a better credit scoring system in the in the Bitcoin space. They have a project around that. So in that situation, I said, yeah, send me a white paper, because I know instantly this is a space where I have some background, some knowledge, and I've done some work in the space myself, and I have an interest, right? And so if someone has an interest like that, they'll say, yeah, go ahead and send me a white paper. I'd like to learn a little bit more. Other than that, I would say to go through the main channels, and you most likely have the best luck getting your startup company started through friends and family. I mean, that's what we all do. You know, try and get to revenues as fast as you can, leveraging friends and family that believe in you, that know your character, that know that you'll be honorable, and that you'll work, you know, desperately hard to try and make this a success.
Great. Tom, do you have anything else you can add? Any other insights?
I think these guys covered it really well.
Covered it, yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, I have a couple of last questions. The first one is, how much, when high net worth individuals are all, you know, investing in technology now, in your industry, how much digital technology has been applied within the high net worth industry itself? I.e., are the investors actually using technology themselves to manage their money and to live? Tom, would you like? Sorry,
I don't have
Brian.
enough insight to really comment on that. I can only comment on myself. I don't have enough insight into other offices and what they're doing. So
Okay, that's interesting.
Yes, I mean, I can just simply say technology has given investors much better insights into not only what they own, because everybody knows, and in the past, people just cared about how much money they made, but now there are so many more tools to explain how they made money. And so, you know, that type of knowledge of attribution and factors of return, and you know, even insights into, like, I saw a kind of a more of a tongue-in-cheek tweet, but someone had noted that their funds, that their investments that did best were founded by people named Matthew. So you can see, now that's of course a jokingly bad use of technology, but
Yes.
technology is making everybody smarter. But of course, as you know, that's how you game a system, because then if you change your name to Matthew, you can raise a lot of money.
That's funny. I like that. I like that. Massimo, do you have anything to add to this?
No, not really. I think you know, my two other panelists are you know, can comment more eloquently. Is you know, I would just reiterate what I said at the beginning. Technology is just everywhere. I mean, you know, we are able to conduct a summit remotely. It's you know, that you cannot live without any, you know, without technology. You know, that's you know, I think that's my mantra.
I do want to add one thing. You know, I don't know if you're familiar with Chris Catalini. He's an MIT professor. He was also one of the advisors to Facebook for their Libra project. But one of his white papers is he used machine learning to review pitch books and investor presentations. And with 80% accuracy, he could pick winners. So it turns out even venture can probably benefit from machine learning.
Yeah,
that's fascinating.
As a final comment, machine learning is coming a long way, and we are using it internally to manage our portfolio. We're actually having some artificial intelligences, agents we call them, that are learning right now from real-time data and markets. And they may not be able to beat a human yet, but that's only a matter of time before they do. And I see that happening in all markets. And having kind of grown up in the machine learning space quite a bit, there's truly a limited amount of knowledge and resources. A lot of people talk about it, there's a lot of buzz about it, but there's a limited number of really knowledgeable resources that can effectively apply this technology that makes a significant difference. And so there's a real opportunity there, I think, for offices to use that.
So that's very interesting. That's fascinating. I think that could be actually another panel.
Mhm.
So since we started off with fun, I want to end with some fun. And the most interesting people, all the people that I meet are in some way, shape or form are collectors. I met actually someone that collected 1950 swim caps. You know, who would think about that? There's standard collections, stamps, coins, you know. Also, I met someone who had every hotel key room that he'd ever been in his garage on the wall, which I thought was a bit strange. So to finish, I'd like to understand, do you guys collect, and what do you collect? And I'm not talking about hoarding, I'm talking about collecting. So Brian, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Chessboards. I've
Oh,
got
wow.
all kinds of chessboards, from Lord of the Rings to ancient American Indians to all kinds of different chess games. That's something I collect.
Wow, that's great. Tom?
I just moved into a house after living in a city for more than a decade. So I have a lot of empty space. I guess I'm starting to think, would hotel room keys be a good way to start a collection? But I don't have any collections right now.
Oh, wow. Okay. You've been too busy, but probably
Yeah.
data is your collection.
Yeah, that's right. I used to collect cell phones because I was a cell phone analyst, and I still have many of the original cell phones, but it's hardly a collection. It's just I never got rid of them.
Okay, that's a hoarding problem. Massimo?
I actually spend a lot of time trying to collect happy memories.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I think it's a philosophy in life. I try to stay, to focus on happy memories, because there is so much other stuff that worries us about. Collect your happy memories. They'll always help you. So that's my collection.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that. So, gentlemen, thank you so much. Just before we move to the audience Q&A, I would like to, number one, thank the BDA team for all their help in setting this up. Trying to pull off a complete virtual event, I'm sure, caused some challenges that nobody even thinks about. And to the panelists, I thank you so much indeed for your time. And I hope when you're all on the rock, you change from panelists and become friends. So I look forward to seeing you in Bermuda. And to the audience, time is the most precious item. And so therefore, thank you for the privilege of your time. And I hope that we in some way went to answer some of your questions. Thank you very much indeed. Join us now in the virtual networking lounge for a live Q&A discussion. Thank you.